Welcome to your Artsy Girl podcast. I am your host, Christina Carrere. This is a podcast about art, poetry, writing, and anything about creativity. Sit back, relax, and get your dose of brain food to get your creative juices flowing. Welcome to episode 45. Today's featured guest is Riekki. He is a poet and an award-winning screenwriter. He is the author of My Ancestors Are Reindeer Herders and I'm Melting in Extinction, Saami-American nonfiction, fiction, and poetry. UP, a novel, and Post-Traumatic, a memoir. He edited 5 anthologies, The Way North, by Michigan Notable Book, and Here, 100 Years of Upper Peninsula Writing, 1917 through 2017. Here, Women Writing on Michigan's Upper Peninsula by Independent Publisher Book Award. Undocumented, Great Lakes Poets Laureate on social justice and the many lives of the evil dead, essays on the cult film franchise. He's published his writing in the 3 Penny Review, Bellevue Literary Review, Wigleaf, Spillway, Poetry Northwest, and many other literary journals. Riekki is a Saami-American, Karelian American, and Finnish American. If he ever got a tattoo, it'd say Sisu. His home is the north, the far north, no farther than that, he says. Everyone, welcome my next featured guest, Riekki.
Hi, Ron. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
I was introduced to you by Eileen Casanetto, a former featured guest of mine here on your Artsy Girl podcast. And she told me that I just had to put you on the show because she was moved by your poetry and for what you stood for as a poet writer. So can you tell me a little more about yourself? I understand you are an indigenous writer. Like, where were you born and where you are from? Because that's primarily how I start most of my podcasts, because I'd like the audience to know a little backstory, like your background, before we begin.
Yeah, she had Aline, who's a great person. She had invited me to speak at Belmont Library. It was for an Indigenous Roots event. And that was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Carolyn Goodwin, Jackie Rigoni were at it. Some other poets. It was really amazing. So I appreciate Eileen for that. And I got to apologize. I'm just coming off of bronchitis, so I'll be coughing a little bit. Yeah, I'm from Michigan. But I've lived all over. I've lived in Florida, too, and I've lived kind of all over Florida. So I'm sure we've gone to some of the same places. And then a lot of the Sami, a lot of Finns, a lot of Karelians came to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, I think because it was nice and cold, like they used to. So it just felt familiar. So there's a lot of that background in that area. And so I write about it a lot. Like my book that published 4 books this year, and one of them is My Ancestors Are Reindeer Herders and I'm Melting in Extinction. And a lot of Michigan is in that book, although there's some Florida in it too. But yeah, I tend to write. I'm sure you're the exact same way. Writing place, yes. You know how important it is to you.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so now you are a mixture of, just like me, several cultures. Can you just elaborate a little more about that?
Yeah, it's very interesting that with Sami and Karelian, one of the problems with Karelian cultures is that the Russian border is kind of cut right down the middle of it. So half the Karelians are on the Russian side, and there's a mute button in Russia. So on those Karelians that are on that side, their voice isn't exactly heard much, I would argue. And so then because that split, then it cuts the culture in half. And then Sami are very nomadic. They're in Russia and Finland and Sweden and Norway, and very border transcendent. So I know when I was doing the undocumented Great Lakes Poet Laureates on Social Justice book that came out with Michigan State University Press this year, I really wanted to make sure that we didn't think in terms of Great Lakes of being just U.S. I really wanted to be U.S.-Canada. I'm working with April Lindola, who's an indigenous writer herself, and she was big on pushing me towards kind of fuck the borders. You know what I mean? Like the borders they're made up. For Anishinaabe people in particular, where I'm from, the peninsula, this whole border between Michigan and Wisconsin and Canada and in Minnesota and stuff, it's just myth. It's not real. But the waters all connect you all together. So I like when I'm putting together these anthologies, I love multi-vocality to make sure that I have a lot of voices heard. And I think it's because grew up border-minded, but transcending borders, where I grew up in the Upper Peninsula. So we watched a lot of Canadian television and radio, French radio coming in and stuff. And we would use Canadian money in the United States, and just like it was U.S. money. And I like that. I like that a lot. I am the exact opposite of wanting to build a wall. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I'm as far away from that mentality as you possibly can. I would love to build a conveyor belt at the border so we get as much people interweaving as we possibly can. So it's
right.
and that's how that's how I do my writing too, is I like to be very hybrid. I like to, anytime someone says stuff like, they say you write, you're kind of asked me this before, you're a poet or something like that. Well, I'm like, no, because I do everything. Like if I'm writing a poem, I'll break into prose. If I'm writing a novel, I'll break into poetry. I really like doing that, so that you're not handcuffed in these pretend ways we love to do. That sort of incarceration mindset that United States have. I like to get away from that and just think more in terms of freedom.
I could see that. I've read a couple of your poems, and the one that really interested me was the I'm just paraphrasing, the first lines of a Terry Gross interview or something like that.
Oh, God.
Found poem. Yeah. And wow, that is amazing. And it was kind of, a little humorous. And I wish I could come up with clever things like that,
I was listening to Terry Gross interviews, and I just started realizing how many people start sentences with "well." And I think what they're trying to do is they're just trying to, it's a pause for them to think of what they want to say. Right. So the question is asked, and then they just say, well, and then they give their answer. So I thought it was like anaphora, we're getting this perfect repetition that we're going to have. And I sent them the wrong version. I had a better version of it, but I sent them an old version. And then when they accepted it, I was like, son of a gun. And I was too timid to say, can I send you the one I meant to send you? Instead, I just haven't published the one I had. So
how many times have I sent and it gets published not the way I want it to? Yeah. So yeah. And how about the poems that you are not your favorite, but they pick it, out of all the it's like, okay, whatever floats your boat.
That happens all the time. When I for the Way North, my first anthology that came out, it got the Michigan Notable Book from the Library of Michigan, which means it's one of the top 20 books of the year for the state of Michigan. And Michigan is 10 million people. It's a big state, so that's a pretty big honor. But my books I've done since then have not gotten any. And I definitely would make a strong argument that those other books are more significant, much harder to put together, and better books. But that first one got the Michigan Notable. And so then I started realizing all these awards, they kind of don't really make a lot of sense to me, because I was like, if they understood the amount of work I had to do I did a collection of writing called Women Writing on Michigan's Upper Peninsula, which I just think is a beautiful book, just an incredible book. And it didn't get the nomination. And I mean, the Way North's good, but when that here came out, I just thought it was just like, I just thought it was I thought it was the best book of the year in Michigan, because it was all these powerhouse female writers writing about the UP. And I just thought they were like rock stars. And so that's when I realized that the awards, it's a weird thing. It's the same thing, though, when I see the Oscars and stuff a lot of times.
It's all subjective, It's like, what? And you can't predict that. You really can't. Yeah. But, it's like with anything, like when you're competing for a job, right? The person who has like the most qualifications or the most prestige usually gets it. Yeah, that's true. But with poetry, it's subjective, and also having a lot of accolades also does help your standing.
Oh my God, yes. My book sale for that book, that's the most I've ever sold on a book. When it won the Michigan Notable, it was selected for Michigan Notable. By far, that's the most sales I've ever had. So awards equal sales. That's the thing that's really important about them.
It is very important. And I'm just now in my career, I'm starting to really submit my work out there to these things. And but it's like I said, it's all subjective and it's a crapshoot. Totally.
Yeah, but I'm all for submitting. Like if there's probably writers listening to this and maybe new writers. I submit. I love submitting. I love rejections. There's nothing better than rejection.
Oh yeah, no. Not to say that I don't submit my work. It's like I just started submitting to the awards and the fellowships and all that stuff. Okay. So, but no, on the note on submissions, it's a numbers game, I believe. You have worked with quite an extensive of powerhouse poets. Where did you go get your MFA?
So my college career has been interesting. It's been hard for me to get work. And so sometimes when I just am not surviving, I'm just like, well, screw it. I'm just going to apply for another master's because I was getting that paid to go to school, for like my PhD and stuff. So I started with a bachelor's at Central Michigan. I got an MFA at Brandeis University, cross-registered at Harvard and at Boston University. Then I went to University of Virginia, MFA. And then I went to Wayne State University, PhD, cross-registered at Charles University in Prague, University of Quebec, and I got another master's in Graduate Theological Union. So I got 3 bachelor's, 3 masters, and PhD. And people will be like, well, how the heck did you do that? And in some ways, it's like a job, where you're getting paid. Like when I was going to MFA for Virginia, I won the Henry Hines Fellowship. So you get paid to go to school. So it's a pretty good thing.
Well, I must have done it. I know I did it wrong then. I'm still paying for my student loans. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But I did the military first though. Like you didn't do GI Bill? I know you're Army.
I did. You know what happened? This is just a little side. I got the GI Bill for my undergrad, but they didn't tell me that I had to say some magic word to get into, have it extended to my master's. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I did was I went back in. I was Navy. I got GI Bill, so I got my bachelor's. Then when I went to get my master's at Brandeis, I got a big scholarship, but it didn't fully pay for everything. So I went back in the Air Force Reserves. Then that helped me to pay off the rest of that. Then with Virginia, it was full scholarship. Then it was Western Michigan full scholarship. And then GTU is the one where then I had to start paying some money, and I'm done paying money for school now. Although I am I'm doing community college stuff right now for medical, but it's really, really, really cheap in California for community college.
Oh yeah, that's what I heard. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that is a very interesting, very, very interesting. So with that said, you have worked with quite a bit of distinguished writers and poets.
What's funny is if I named you a list right now, it's probably like 25 names I could give you because all those programs I'm taking workshops with, my God, it's, I think I put Deborah Eisenberg, John Casey, Anne Beattie, Rob Evers, Arnie Johnson, Steve Pfeffer, Jamie Gordon, Richard Katrovis, Arthur Holmberg, Stephen Cushman, Stephen Geller. It's just this long Anselm Hollo. It's this incredible list of amazing writers. So the cool thing is when I write, their voices come into my head all the time. I was just working on a story where Anne Beattie, who's best short stories of the century, I was working on my opening paragraph, and a thing she had said from workshop stuck in my head, and I said, okay, this I need to do with this opening. So it's a blessing in that regard. I'm for a workshop.
You like the workshop setting?
I do, and the reason why I do is because I just don't care. Like, somebody can say something like, "You're the worst writer I've ever read in my life," and it just fires me up to write. And somebody can tell me, "You're the best writer I've ever read in my life," and it fires me up to write. So no matter what somebody says, it gets me excited to go write. So I'm good for that. I think if you get shut down, then there was one student when I was at Brandeis, who was a very good writer, came to the workshop, and one of the guys was our workshop leader, was harsh. I mean, really brutal. The teacher was incredibly, unnecessarily brutal to us. And over the course of the semester, I saw this one individual just collapsing. By the end of it, couldn't write. And so workshopping for that individual was horrible. But that person was not a good workshop leader at all. But I also had, people, who the heck was at Brandeis when I was there? There's two writers. I'm not going to remember their names now. Jane Ann Phillips is one of them. She's incredible. And then I'm not going to remember the other person's name either. He had a movie that he had a book that Jennifer Aniston was starred in. I can't remember, but yeah. So I kind of work pretty well with the horrible workshop leader, who I see if I got through that semester, it just shows how committed I am. And then also you get people like Arnie Johnson, Stuart Diebeck, who's, if anybody can ever take a class with Stuart Diebeck, nobody autopsied a story better than that guy. He would come in and he would show exactly where the heart attack was occurring in the story. He was like, right here is when the story stopped breathing, And yeah, he was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, I love him.
How did you begin to write, though, become a writer or decide that this is what you wanted to do? I know you were in the military like I was. And when I was in the military, I wasn't really thinking too much of poetry until I got out. Well, I did before, but I wasn't into it, but until I got out. So how about you?
Well, interesting story for that is never was a writer. I would goof around with it when I was a kid, do things like make little books and stuff to amuse myself. So that one teacher ended up sending me to some writing program for children that was pretty cool. But I never, ever, I guess for one thing, I'd never heard of any Sami writer ever. Never could name any Karelian writer. Never could name any Finnish writer. All of these degrees that I've done, never was there any Sami, Karelian, Finnish writer ever in any of those classes. So it wasn't something that I was like, oh, I come from a culture of that, where that's kind of normalized, Sometimes I wish I was Irish. But so I'm in the military. I'm writing letters home, and that puts some emphasis on importance on writing, because now I got to write these letters home. So I write this one letter home, and I was stationed on Diego Garcia, and we had a aircraft that at the time I thought was shot down. It had crashed right outside of the base. So I went to the shoreline to look at the search and rescue, looking for the plane. And I wrote a letter home saying, we had a plane that was just shot down, and blah, 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 during Desert Storm. And my mom wrote me a letter back, and she said, "Were you on the plane?" And I was like, oh, she only has as much knowledge as I'm giving her. And it was just this incredible light bulb that went off of that. She only has this like television news of Desert Storm. So what I'm writing to her, I have to start filling in details. And that changed my writing forever. Because that was the very first time in my life that I went, okay, specifics, details are incredibly important right now. So that was a big change for me. And when I taught writing in the prison system, I would give that story to the prisoners, because it's a similar thing for them, where they're incarcerated. They're trying to write to their family back home. The family's only going to know what's in that letter. So let's have you learn details and specifics so they can get to know what's really going on in your life. So that's the honest answer of when I started becoming a writer, because that was the first time I actually was thinking about the writing and trying to improve myself as a writer.
Mm-hmm. And then you got out and you went to school.
So I got out. We had 10 people killed at the various bases I was on. So that was something I was coping with. It was kind of haunting me pretty deeply. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So I started studying religion. Mm-hmm. So my undergraduate degree was in religion with a minor in philosophy. And when I was there, long story that I'll try to make short, but Dr. Huff was there, Robin Huff. He's this guy who was friends with Mary Daly, who's this big radical feminist, and he was pretty radical in the classroom in a way that I loved, taught unlike anybody I'd ever learned from before. And how do I give you this story fast? I wrote a 50-page essay when we had to write a 5-page essay. He kind of was like, "What are you doing, Ron?" When I was in the military, we weren't allowed to read. So if they caught you reading a book on shift, you could get in tons of problem. And at one point I was doing security, where you stare at security cameras, and it's the most boring thing in the world. So what I did was I started sneaking in George Orwell's 1984. And so I would tear out one page of the book and put it in my pocket, and I would put it on my desk, and I would be reading it. And then if somebody came in the room, I would crumple it up and throw it in the garbage. And it was just, I don't think I've ever
that. Oh my God.
Yeah,
you rebel, you. Oh my God.
Yeah. And then when they leave, I'd take it out of the garbage again, and then I would finish that page of 1984. And that's how I read the whole book of George Orwell's 1984. Was one page at a time, crumpling it up and throwing it in the garbage. But when I got ready for school, I was thirsty for school. I 4-pointed right out the gate, because when a teacher would assign chapters 1, 3, and 5, I'd read them all. I'd read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because I was starved to learn, because I didn't want to go back to what I had just come from, which was the military. I didn't meet anybody rich in the military. That's some working class poor kids that go in the military, and I didn't want to go back to that. I didn't want to go back to the humiliation of it, the way that you're. I'm sure it's the same for you. Where we had to paint the bottom of stairs, which. Which makes
KP duty, you name it. Yes, I did that. Funeral detail, I did that. Yeah.
We had to pull dead rabbits out of barbed wire, so go around the base and just pulling out dead animals and put them in bags, and just jobs like that where they're just trying to
fill in time, just whatever,
just trying to make people. So when I got to writing, like with Dr. Huff, I turned in that 50-page paper, and he said to me, "You'd be a good candidate for Harvard. I want you to write another paper, and if you can do this, I can make a recommendation to get you into Harvard University." So I was like, "Oh my Lord, this is insane!" So I went and I wrote another. It was he's like, "Give me 10 pages." So I did another 30 pages, turned it into him. And he said, I'm going to give you the short version. But the short version is, he said, you just wrote me a short story. I asked you to do a research paper. And he said, that's not what Harvard wants. Harvard doesn't want a short story writer. Harvard wants somebody who's going to go and just do boring, detailed research. And he said, the good news for you is, I think you're a writer. I think you are a short story writer. And I was in his office, and I remember this sort of shock going through my body of, it's the first time anybody had ever told me, you are this.
Yeah.
Wasn't what I wanted, because I didn't want to go to Harvard. And I realized I just kind of threw Harvard out the window. So the cool thing was I ended up cross-registering there later. But that's when a shift, a light bulb went off in my head, and that's when I just started writing all the time after that, because I realized this is who I am, this is what I do, and that's why this year I published 4 books, and I've got, like I said, in the next 3 years I got 11 books coming out, because it's what I do, and the weird thing about it for me is that I haven't been able to get the creative writing teaching job, the sort of holy grail of that. And so what I end up doing then is I end up doing a lot of minimum wage type work that is an extension of that humiliation that I've had to go through in the
tell me about that. And is it something you choose to do, or is it because of you want some writing time?
No, God, that's like when I was at University of Virginia. I'm talking with John Casey, National Book Award winner, and he goes to me. He said this to me. He goes, "It was great you joined the military, so you get a lot of material for your writing." And I was like, "What in the hell kind of madness are you talking about?" I went in the military because I had no other choice. Like, and so if I could get a creative writing job, I would just dive into that and be like the most ecstatic human ever. I would cry. I would be so happy, but I haven't been able to get it. And the sad thing is when you have all these degrees, I just went into an interview yesterday where it was this girl who was probably like 25, all tatted up. She had skull tattoo stuff on her arm, showing me it for the interview. And she just, as soon as I walked in the room, I was like, I knew. She looked at me like, "You're one of 500 people. You mean nothing." You know what I mean? And I was like, "My God."
I've been to academic. Yes, I know. I've been to so many myself.
No, this is not academic. This is for a minimum wage job I'm applying for.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
No, this is for a job where I'm not going to say where or who or anything, but this is a bad job that I'm applying for. Okay. That you do not have to have. You need about 3 months of education to be able to get. Yes. And it was just treated like you just don't mean anything in this world. And the thing of the more that I've had to go through that in my life, the more that I get home and I just want to write. You know, I've worked. Yeah, I've worked in.
My question is, have you applied for any of that?
You know what's funny is I had one.
You have a PhD, right?
Yeah. What's funny is one person actually said to me, I said, I'm struggling trying to find work. And the person said, "Why don't you become a lawyer?" And I was like, okay, Harry Potter. Like, yeah, if you can wave the magic wand, but I think it's not simple. So, I mean, I apply for these jobs and a lot of times I get to be a second place finalist, which is a wonderful, nice little pat on the back, but I can't get them. I just have not been able to get them. I mean, I'm going to keep trying until I die.
Right. Hey, I'm so glad that we're having this conversation because, most of my writer friends who have the PhD or the MFA with many publications and have that position of, teaching in academia, having that teaching job in colleges and universities. And it just makes it, to me, it was like, okay, I need to get my PhD because I don't understand. I mean, it's like, there's no way I can break in. But I guess the struggle is still real, even if you do have your PhD.
Massively. And I've published a lot. It's
a lot. Wow.
Yeah, it's something I just can't do. I'm good at being a second place finisher for those, but I mean, the one thing that I have been able to figure out is how to get books published. So I'm working with really good publishers right now. It's Edinburgh University Press and Michigan State University Press and Wayne State University Press. And it's basically multi-book deals with them. So I'm in with really good publishers. I know how to do that. I'm getting into really good magazines. I get, like Three Penny Review and Bellevue Literary Review and Shenandoah. And that's like those three publications right there. That's over $1,000 for three short stories.
Well, here's my thought process here now. Okay. You got those major publications in very big literary presses. Now, I think it's time to go get an agent and get that onto, into novel form, something, I think you are a good candidate for that. Actually, it's time to go and get an agent.
Well, I had an agent. I actually had a television writing agent for years.
Okay.
That would be a long side thing to talk about, but yeah, I worked on television show writing for a while. I didn't sell anything, but I came out the gate really strong where I had a pitch that I had given to a friend of mine who was a TV writer. And he said, "That's brilliant. Let me set you up with my agent." So I went in and I pitched it. She said, "That's brilliant." Basically signed me on the spot. We set the record for her agency for the most meetings with production companies in Hollywood, in Los Angeles. And they did a early pilot that they shot, really cheap, just early pilot. It didn't get picked up though, and so it got shut down basically. And then I pitched another one. She liked that one too. Me and my friend shot our own little pilot with it. Got some little offers, but it didn't actually get picked up. Then I pitched them a third show. She didn't really like that. Kind of bombed. And then my friend said, don't pitch her another show until you have something that's like your first one, or it's kind of brilliant. Because the first one I had, I gotta be honest, there's a television show that's on the air right now that's really similar to the thing that I pitched. But I'm not like one of those persons who gets all. There's a lot of ideas out there that you know what I mean, like
right,
that are similar. So it's not like I don't think they ripped it off. I just think was a good idea, and I didn't quite hone it exactly the way that they wanted it, and somebody else did. A friend of mine actually is, I think niece writes for that TV show actually. But yeah. So right now what I'm doing is I just did a book tour. I did 63 dates. And as I'm doing all those dates, I'm at a lot of libraries and a lot of bookstores. And I talk to the bookstores and I talk to the libraries about what sells. And they really push me strongly to run screaming away from poetry and try to do as much of more full-length fiction, nonfiction as you can. So I'm kind of right now, I am working on some of that, but
good.
I got next year. I got 5 more books coming out, so it's gonna be a poetry book, 4 more anthologies, and then I got the other anthologies after that. And then I did a nonfiction, the post-traumatic, a memoir. That's a short nonfiction collection this year. And then My Ancestors Are Reindeer Herders. That's a combination of fiction, poetry, and nonfiction. And I am getting, from those books, I'm getting a lot of interest in the nonfiction aspects in particular, because I've worked in the military and in the prison system and on ambulances and sort of some jobs that are cinematographic, I guess. And then I think I told you too, I do have my novel, UP is film optioned, and then MC2 film in Romania. A short screenplay of mine was selected from their screenplay competition, and it got filmed in Romania, and now it's been playing in 23 different film festivals. And
very good.
So now they're because of the way that it works with film I'm learning from Hollywood. If you bomb, you're screwed. If it does well, you're set. In my first short film, it's just been getting into nonstop film festivals and getting a lot of awards. So they said, do you have anything else? I sent them another script, and so they're going to be shooting that one now. And the next script that they're doing is going to be stop motion animation. And I love like Corpse Bride. It's not on everybody's top 10 list, but I just love that movie. Nightmare Before Christmas and stuff like that. I love stop motion animation. So when they said they were going to do it as stop motion animation, I got so pumped up. And they're sending me the early drawings for it and stuff now. And they're a really good company. That first one that they did, the short film, is called America. They did an amazing job with that. And then I did a rewrite of a horror film, Flesher, that got shot this year too. So the film stuff is going well right now, I think.
That's exciting. I mean, you're writing a lot of different kinds of, cross genre, and now you're in film. I just feel that you're on the brink of something. I just feel that something's going to happen for you, and you are doing it. It's just that as far as getting that major break, but as far as many jobs, I have to tell you, I have been in the same situation. I mean, I got a steady job now, but I'm always living vicariously on the edge. It's like, when is it going to be better? And then, but that's how it is. I mean, I set forth on my MFA, and it's landed me some community college jobs. And teaching overseas, but nothing like a university post or anything. So Do you have a couple of poems or short stories or, you'd like to share with us?
So this is a nonfiction piece. This is from Post-Dramatic, a memoir. It's kind of a short one. So this is called Fiction, and it's nonfiction. So this was his first memory, he said. He said he was watching TV at home with his mother, and I don't remember the way he told it exactly, but he was sitting on her lap, and his dad was angry about something. I think it was cooking, but I don't honestly remember. Mm-hmm. The thing was that he wanted her to cook, and she wasn't cooking or wouldn't cook what he wanted. I can't remember exactly. And his father was an explosive guy and went into the other room, got a gun, and told her to put him down. But she wouldn't because she realized he was going to shoot her. So she kept him between the two of them, holding him to her. And he said his father stepped forward and shot, hitting her in the shoulder, and he broke away and ran into the other room. And his father shot again, and this time killed her. Then his father came into the room with a gun, and he realized his father was going to shoot him next. So he jumped out a window and ran. That was the story he wrote. Except it was so much better than this, than what I'm saying. It had misspellings, and I loved it. It was raw. This prisoner who was just writing the worst fluff, the worst just empty stuff. He wasn't telling the truth. And then I tell him to write what his greatest fear was, and this comes out. Telling him he can't use the word fear, but had to show fear. I just thought it was really effective, frightening. I felt like I understood him better as a person, and that's what good writing does, don't you think? I don't believe it, he says. He's got a beard, white guy, maybe 50, looks like a woodsman. He's not entertained by the story. You believe that? He asked me. Yeah, I do, I say. It doesn't matter, the woman next to him says. There's three of them, all white. They're from Minnesota. They don't have Minnesota accents. They have no accent. They talk like news reporters. They have jobs. I don't. They're going to decide if I get a job. It could be fiction. But he told them to write about their lives, non-fiction. Yes, but the point is to get them writing. I believe it, though, I say. These are prisoners doing double life, triple life, quadruple life. They've had hard lives. One guy's entire head was completely done in tattoos, a dragon across the top of his head, all orange and black, his face covered in tats. He really doesn't believe me now. His skin looks like it's seen a lot of winters. He's always lived in Minnesota. Started as an adjunct, taught at the college for years, then got in as a professor, got tenure, and now is in a fancy, expensive, barren hotel room. It's few chairs drawn up. He's judging the prisoner's story from the hotel room chair, touching his beard. And he's judging my story of the prisoner's story to see if it showcases my ability to break through to a student and get them to write the truth. And out there somewhere is a murdered woman, or maybe she doesn't exist. Somewhere there is a father in prison, or maybe he doesn't exist, but Tony exists. Tony is in prison. I've met Tony. I've worked with Tony for a full semester. His Denzel Washington grin, his Napoleon Dynamite shyness, the pocket on his shirt ripped on purpose so that it was useless to, quote, represent the struggle. Or maybe now he's becoming fiction, even though I'm trying to keep him nonfiction. But I'm nonfiction, the author, me. I exist. And so does my averaging $7,000 a year for my entire adult life. Fear of more poverty is nonfiction. Not able to afford heat is nonfiction. Baking a potato for warmth, sleeping with the laundry piled on the bed alone at 40. How do people find girlfriends who are poor? It's like magic. Sometimes I feel like I don't exist, but the judge does, the warden does, the creative writing faculty does, the editor, you exist, the reader, you exist. It's a new story now, convoluted, removed, desperate in its own way. The editor reads it wondering, what does this accomplish? It's a flash of lies. What is that worth? The writer hopes to get out of poverty. The prisoner hopes to have his story continue on. He's been heard. He's haunted somebody with words. Somebody who has more power than him is able to use a computer, is able to submit to magazines, but is also on edge of a future being in prison or being on a campus. It's razor sharp, the edge, the way things unravel, the way stories unravel. The Minnesota creative writing professors take me out that night and recommend the pecan-crusted halibut, $17.99. I order water. I'm used to ordering water. Have a rule that I'm not allowed to order anything to drink except water. I'm used to eating appetizers as full meals. I'm skinny. Tony isn't, though. He's muscular. It's like magic. How does he eat the prison food? There was a way that you eat when you have 10 more years to go. There's a way you eat when you have a long-term job. There's a way you write when you have a full-time job. There's a way you think when you have a full-time job. There's a struggle to learn how to write when you are in prison. There's a survival to writing when you have the dream of teaching, but your reality is finding the cheapest apartment in the city, even if that means gunshots that wake you up at night, and they will wake you. And when it gets really bad, the humiliation of moving in with your parents, and this is after the Navy years, after the Air Force years, the back failing, hoping for the creative writing position where I have to look into my biggest fears to survive, tap the horrors of my past, and they keep continuing as long as I don't have a job. But it's not the sexiness of the alcohol addiction. It's the nights with nothing, the inability to go out and do the simplest of things. If your stories are good enough, you can be loved, I sometimes think. I see the creative writing professor with his wife, with his kids. If your stories are good enough, you can convince a judge. If a story is good enough, you can convince a creative writing hiring team. You can convince an editor. You convince yourself. Tony is real. The gun to him is real. The gun to me is real. Tony's desperate. I'm desperate. Some stories commit suicide. Some are murder.
Good God. Wow. Yeah, it's amazing.
Thanks.
Oh my gosh. You had like the opening part of it was, you started off with a scene, and it's almost like, okay, and then the premise of your whole your title of it was fiction, right? Is fiction?
That's the title, yeah, fiction.
But it's nonfiction, or is it really? Which part is fiction? As a reader, as a listener.
No, it's not fiction.
Oh, I know. But the way you open this scene up, though, is that the perspective of the prisoner guy?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I could say is I've taught in prison, and I worked in the medical field in prison, and the prison systems in America are the most corrupt, messed up, awful, They're the exact opposite of rehabilitation. In my own personal point of view, the biggest thing that we have to do to fix America is we have to fix our gun problem and our prison problem, and those go hand in hand together. They are married. So I do write about prison a lot because the level of violence in the place is just absolutely ridiculous. Yeah.
What was that prison show that was really popular back in a few years back?
Like talking about Oz?
Yeah. Yeah, that was disturbing for me. I was like, wow.
The only thing is the prisons are much worse than the
worse than that
will ever show you. I mean, here's a perfect example. Is one time I said I was teaching, this was actually in Minnesota too, and I had to give a presentation for a creative writing job, and I was talking about images are really simple to do. It's simple to have an image. I can tell you the image, and it's going to stick with you the rest of your life, and you can't get it out of your head because it's so strong. And then class said, can you give us an example? And I said I could, but the problem is the image is going to get stuck in your head. And they sort of pushed us, hey, you're here to get hired to teach creative writing. You're saying you can tell us an image that we'll never forget. Let me hear it. Well, the thing is, I've worked as an EMT. I've worked in the prison system. So I said, okay, you're pushing me for this. And I do get asked fairly frequently, what's the most disgusting thing you've ever seen, as in the prison or as an EMT or whatever. And what I've done is I usually don't answer, because what I did for this one class is I said, okay. And I just described something to them. There was a collective gasp of shock in the room. It was like the air changed in the room. And I kind of like showed them, okay, you said you wanted to see what that's like. I just did it for you. But I realized the moment that happened, I was never going to get hired there, because that image would be associated with me now. And it was not the most pleasant of images. It's the hyper masculinity and the hyper violence that's part of our incarceration system. Right. So because I've seen so much of that by working in the prison system and then working in medical, the opioid crisis is very different. The gun epidemic is very different when you see somebody up close who's been shot. It's a different way you're going to talk about it if you are a gun owner who has this fantasy about gun protection. And you have no link to the realities of the how brutal a bullet can be. So because of what I end up working in, because I'm not getting those Karelian jobs, I end up working in fields that are making it so I could easily write a book. Here's a perfect example I give you. When I was at the University of Virginia, I'm coming out of the military. I go to the University of Virginia. So we have to hand in a short story every single month for a workshop. People are handing in a flash fiction piece. That's it. That's all I did for the whole month of flash fiction.
Really?
Every single month, and I'm not exaggerating to you, I turned in a full novel that I had written, a full, complete novel. Every month, to the point where John Casey took me aside and said, Ron, I don't want you doing this anymore. And I was like, why? Is it too much reading for everybody? And he said, no, pick one of them and let's get it published. So that's what he did. Is he said, stop, no more new books. And so what we did is UP, my novel UP, in John Casey class, he was like, I want that rewritten. So then I had to work for the next time I turned it in, it was a rewrite of that book. And then I worked with Sidney Blair at Virginia too, of getting it ready. And now I think it's a great book. I mean, I know it's a great book because
what's the name of this book?
It's called UP. And the cool thing is it's been filmed option now, I think maybe 3-4 times there's been 4 different producers. It's never been shot, but there was a point in time where one producer had given it to, and I've kind of said this before, so I'm kind of feel like I'm saying something over and over, but he had given it to Sean Penn, and Sean Penn had said, he said, quote unquote, that I'm a hell of a writer. And so then for the rest of my life, I was like, okay, I got that. At least that's happened once.
You got Sean Penn's approval. So yeah. What press did the UP get published in?
It was Ghost Road Press, but it's a long story. When I came out of Virginia, John Casey nominated for the Sewanee Writers Series, and they accepted it. And it was a $10,000 book contract right out the gate. This is right out my MFA from Virginia. And then a few months later, they contacted me back and they said their funding had been pulled. And so they said, unfortunately, we're gonna have to pull the contract. This is something I'm talking with other writers. I've found other people have experienced stuff like this too, but it was this devastating thing because I had contacted my father, who he's much more supportive now than maybe at first, where he was kind of like, he wasn't really wanting me to go into the writing world because it can be pretty brutal to try to survive. And I got to call him and say, hey, I sold the book for $10,000 freaking dollars. And then I had to call him back later and tell him it's not going to happen. So the lucky thing was I got a chapter from it published in New Ohio Review, and then this Ghost Road Press had read it, that chapter, liked it, asked to see this full book, and then they offered me a contract. And I don't know if I've got to meet a lot of famous people. At least, I got to meet, who else? Hilary Swank and
wow.
Yeah, it was kind of like a lot of Alice in Chains was interested in doing the soundtrack for it.
No,
so
wow.
Dinner with them. They really wanted to do the soundtrack for it. And then Slayer read it. They had it on their tour bus.
So you're saying that the funding got pulled and so they couldn't publish it?
Yeah. So then they just yanked it. They said, we're not doing it anymore, which really broke my back spiritually, but
I can imagine. So there's no other, I mean, be like someone else, you got these people interested in a film option, for goodness sakes. There's got to be somebody.
No, that was much later. That was when it got published with Ghost Road. Then that's when
okay.
Yeah.
So it never got green lighted then?
No, but it's still filmed options, so we'll see. I think the last meeting that they had was an actor from Beverly Hills Cop. I can't remember the name of him.
Good luck to you. Yeah, you got to let me know.
Oh, wow. I just said, I think Nick Flynn talked to you about this, where he was saying took 7 years.
Yeah, he did.
When I was talking with, I got to hang out a few times with Sean Penn. Once was in Malibu. Once he had a bungalow in Palm Springs we were at.
Oh, my goodness.
It was him. I remember I walked into the room and it was him and one of the most famous gay activists from the 60s. I can't remember his name now. And then Doug Brinkley from, I think, CBS News. And, and then Jeremy Renner, who was getting an award. And then this producer said, oh, you know Jeremy? And I said, no. And then Jeremy Renner was pissed. I didn't know who he was. He wouldn't talk to me the rest of the night. And then I got really, really shy. This is another just rambling story right now, but I got really, really shy because there was all these freaking famous people who were like millionaires and stuff. So I wasn't saying anything. And Sean Penn saw I wasn't participating at all. And so then he walked up to me and he pulled my hands out, and then he goes, pick a hand. And I had to pick one of his hands. And then I picked it, and then he opened up his hand, and he started doing this like elaborate magic trick.
Wow.
That was amazing. And everybody was laughing and stuff like that. And what he did, and this is so nice he did this, he wanted to make me feel at ease. So he made me, I didn't do anything. It's like, you know, when you're doing a magic trick and you have one person who's I can't remember what the word is, like foil or whatever. So I'm just like telling him, he's like, okay, which hand now? And then I'm picking the hand. And it was like I was part of this magic trick that everybody loved. And then after that, I was relaxed the whole rest of the night. I started talking again after that. But it was so kind of him to see that how nervous I was, and then go, okay, I'm going to, that's a nice.
How long ago was this?
That was going to be maybe in 2010-ish. So it's like 9 years ago.
Wow.
Another story. I love Sean Penn stories. So we're in Malibu. It's me, producer, and then this guy who used to be the head of one of the studios, ex-president of a studio. And I had a cough then too, because I get sick a lot. So I'm coughing. I start talking about how much I love Hunter S. Thompson. I'm a big Hunter S. Thompson fan. And then Sean Penn goes, well, I know him. And I was like, holy shit, you really? And he's like, yes, I used to hang out with him all the time. And then he starts doing this Hunter S. Thompson impression. And it was like a fucking great Hunter S. Thompson impression. And so I started talking about him, and I mentioned how much I love Charles Bukowski. So then he goes, well, my mother knew Charles Bukowski really well. And he starts telling the story about one time he was at a party and Charles Bukowski wanted to dance with his mom. So Bukowski's dancing with his mom, and he's not trusting Bukowski because he knows what Bukowski's like. So he's like being hyper aware of, what do you do? I don't like Charles Bukowski being that near to my mom. And so then he's switching back and forth between Charles Bukowski impressions and Hunter S. Thompson impressions that are very good. And so I start laughing really, really freaking hard because it's like he's just talented. And so
Sean Penn, my goodness.
Yeah, and at one point I'm laughing so hard I ask him to stop. I say, I'm like having trouble breathing. Please just stop. And I close my eyes and I'm trying to catch my breath. And when I open my eyes, Sean Penn had his nose, I mean, like less than an inch from my nose, right in front of my face, and goes into the Hunter S. Thompson impression again. And I just freaking lost it. I just was like, I died. Like it was the funniest freaking thing. And it was so incredibly theatrical. And the thing that was brilliant about it is it was this improv technique is like, I couldn't take any more at all. I'm like, please stop. It's too much. And then he went, okay, you can't take any more. I'm going to get right in your face and I'm going to do the impression. And it was this beautiful choice where it was just, I'll remember that from the rest of my life of how incredibly freaking funny that was to open my eyes and see him right there, right in front of me when I was not expecting it.
So you haven't seen him since?
No, I haven't. And there was another time where I saw him. We were driving around in his car, which he has a car that I've never driven in a car where women stop, turn, and then just yell to you. But it was just such a gorgeous, beautiful, all black car. And so we're in it. We're driving it to bring it to him because his producer's really good buddies with him. We pull into this like restaurant where Sean's at. And I went eating with him too. And it's funny when he eats because he kind of hides in a corner. He's a little bit shy. He puts his head down so he doesn't get recognized. And we dropped off the car and Sean is a really great guy, and he went to say hi to me, and I didn't say hi back because I get so freaking nervous around people like that. I think he was like a little bit like, well, you're an asshole. But I was just like, I'm like, dude, fucking, you know who you are? Like, oh my God, this is like a rush for me. Because I really like Mystic River and stuff like that. The level of commitment he has as an actor is, and as someone who writes, because I do plays too and films, I love actors. I love actors. There's nothing more beautiful than someone who can fully commit like that. By the way, and just to bring it back on you, that's one of the things that I like about your writing is I like how you're not afraid to commit. Like I was reading your your piece in Rigorous, and then the other one in Complete Journal. And that's the type of writer I like. Like, you're not afraid. And that's like, for me to like you as a writer, that's got to be the like.
Oh my gosh, you read that one on Rigorous, huh?
Yeah, I have a couple pieces in Rigorous too. And by the way, for people out there, that's an amazing publication. If people are looking for places to submit to, highly recommend Rigorous.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
My goodness, you have lived such a rich life, even though,
I'm old.
It's not. How old are you?
I'm old. I
can't be older than me.
What's that?
I said you can't be older than me.
I think my lungs are like decades.
Well, I have to say, very, very interesting. Lots of stories to tell, for sure. For sure. No wonder you're a writer.
Yeah, I could talk for 5 hours right now. There's the amount of stories that you have just from the military. It's just the military. Oh, insanity.
Yeah. I have a poem, and I'm trying to shop it. It's called Military Mothers, and it's a different perspective. It opens up with a line from NPR saying how, I forget the percentage, but, women in the military are the high suicide rate and, things like that. So it's my
22 vets a day commit suicide.
Well, yeah, and more so for women now. And so it's my take on, that perspective of the military experience. So, but yeah, I mean, I didn't serve for too long, only one term. But I was a military brat. So military has been in my blood. So I've lived the life.
Yeah, I've done when I was Navy, I worked with Marines a ton, and then when I was Air Force, I worked with the Army a ton. So I really got to know all four services pretty dang well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where can people go? You have a website online, right?
I mean, I'm not the social media guy. I would just Google my name. I wish I
that's what I was going to suggest too. Mm-hmm.
I had a Twitter account, but Trump destroyed Twitter, so I just closed it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just I couldn't respect it as a company anymore after that. Seriously.
I know. Just giving anybody a platform.
Well, I remember, this is hilarious. So I said this to my girlfriend, as I said, Trump he's such a clown. I guarantee it right now. I can go on to Twitter. And this is true. And I was like, I have no idea what's going to be on it, right? No idea. I said, guarantee I'm going to go on Twitter right now, and it's going to be something, the most ridiculous thing in the world that no president would ever in their life post. So this is a day before Thanksgiving. I'm not making this up. Seriously, swear to God. So I click on Trump's Twitter. I'm not making this up. Seriously, what there is, this is what I see. This is the president of the United States. This is wonderful to live in this day and age. So this is what I see. A big poster, a picture of Trump shirtless as a professional boxer.
Yeah, I've seen that.
You really did that. And I had just said, I guarantee if I click on his Twitter account, it will be the most foolish, ridiculous thing you've ever seen in your life. And I click on it, and it's like, it manifests. What could be more ridiculous than he's shirtless in a boxing ring with that weird Trump hair but he's got this Sylvester Stallone chest.
Well, my girlfriend. I follow politics. I have never been a I didn't never follow it as much as I do now. I mean, I watch it like soap opera.
But listen to this. This is true. So my girlfriend has narcolepsy, right? So she sees it and breaks into such hysterical laughter that she passes out and has a narcoleptic cataplexy and falls to the floor. And she can actually say that the ridiculousness of Donald Trump actually caused her to actually pass out and faint and have a narcolepsy. That's how ridiculous that it is. This is where we live right now. So if anybody right now isn't a writer, you need to become one, because we have. By the way, do you write about this at all? Do you write about Trump?
No. I can't. I'm too close to it. I'm traumatized. But check it out. So, and this is one of the things when I was at the Filipino American Book Festival, and I said to the audience when I was on the panel, I said, I truly admire those who are political in their writing. I said, for me, political is personal. I live it every day, and that's my thing. So, I mean, I can't directly write about, the state of affairs as it is right now, but it does truly affect me.
And Christina, stop it. Quit pretending like you can't. And you need to. I'm going to push you on that one. I'm going to call BS on that one.
Okay. Well, let's put it this way. It'll just be straight up rant. And it's who wants to write?
Please do. Please do. Will you please do that?
It won't be literary. Let's put
let
it
me
that
know
way.
when you get that published, because I do want to read that rant very, very much.
Rant with curse words. How about that?
and you know who I want you to submit it to, and I'm not kidding. Do you know New Verse News?
New what?
Have you heard of New Verse News?
No.
One of the best, maybe the best political publisher out there, and they constantly nominate for pushcart and win pushcarts. You should submit. Yeah, anybody out there who wants to rant right now, New Verse News is one of my favorite literary journals.
Okay, that's the challenge.
Yeah, for sure. Please do your rants and send it to them. And they do great poems on that site. It's really good publisher.
Wow. It's great talking to you. I mean, you do have a lot of stories to tell and very rich life. And hope things, start picking up for you.
I mean, I got 11 books, so I mean, they're
11 books
upcoming. And then
do me a favor when we're offline. Can you email me like all your books and the links to where? Well, I know that some of them are not published yet.
Well, the big four I'll plug right now are going to be, because they're all this year. So
okay, give me the links to them and I'll post them on my site.
Well, I can just recite them right now. It's my ancestors, Reindeer Herders and I, Melting in Extinction. That's Loyola University Maryland Press. Post-traumatic, a memoir. That's going to be small press distribution. And then undocumented Great Lakes Poet Laureates on Social Justice. That's Michigan State University Press. And then this one's on the Bram Stoker Award, Horror Writer Association nomination list for best nonfiction book this year. And that's going to be The Many Lives of the Evil Dead, Essays on the Cult Film Franchise with McFarland. And we're hoping it ends up being one of the 5 finalists for the year. But so, yeah, those are the big 4 that came out this year.
Okay. Well, congrats.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
And what do you got coming out?
I'm still trying to work on my novel, my literary historical novel.
That's what I need to do. I need to do a full-length memoir and another novel. Ever since 2008 was when You People has been published. So I've had all these other books, but I do got to get going on another novel for sure. Yeah.
Well, good. Well, it's been great talking to you. Like I said, and keep me informed and stay in touch and let me know, because I always try to post up, everybody's. I can't do it every single time, but whenever I see accomplishments, publications, I try to share with everyone. Okay.
Yeah. And thank you for all you're doing to help get word out there for other writers. I mean, a lot of times there's some writers I know who will not promote other writers' works. So when you have somebody who is willing to do that, it's pretty nice that you're doing that.
Well, because I had a online literary magazine called The Manila Envelope and a few years back, and it was just me, and it just got a little out of hand. And right now, so far, this is going to be almost going a year. So imagine that, a year, 1 week, every week, a episode. So
they're good.
Once a week.
I listen to a lot of them. It's a really good podcast, and it's very professional. The only thing is, I wish you double the length, because there's a lot of
really.
There's some of those people that you interview when you get done. I'm like, oh God, you were just starting.
Well, there you go. You know why? That makes you want to go and look them up, or you just like the conversation.
Yeah, it's like with what's it? Joe Rogan will go like 3 hours with people, and Mark Maron. those 2.5. Yeah, and I listened to the whole thing because if I'm into the person, if I'm interested, like that Nick Flynn interview, you could easily done 2 hours with me and I would have been riveted the whole time because it was really interesting.
Well, I'm sure my audience are going to be like riveted on your episode.
Hopefully.
Because it is very rich and very interesting.
Thank you. I appreciate it very, very much. Thanks.
Well, everyone, that is it for now. Please tune in next week for my next featured guest. In the meantime, have a productive and creative week. Bye, Ron.
Yeah, bye. See ya. Thank you.